Now we discussed the sort of process of doing data analysis. And this is underlined by what I call the DIKW process. I've already mentioned this. The data goes through a set of steps, a pipeline. Data becomes information, becomes knowledge, becomes wisdom, or becomes decisions. And then eventually those decisions can be turned into policies and community perceptions and things like that. As you go down this chain, typically the data is the largest, and the wisdom can be just a single idea as the smallest. And also there is a gray area between these various steps. And there's also some debate as to what you need to keep. Do you keep the information or throw away the data or what have you? It depends on the field, because sometimes the processing of the data to make information is so detailed and so arcane and requires you to know so much. There's not much point in keeping the data, because once you've done it, you'll never be able to reproduce it, because so much effort went into it and so much detail that it will take too much effort to record that detail. This is shown here as a picture I produced a year or two ago, where actually I even added raw data in front of data. And I have here, here we have around the edges here, we have lots of sources of data, which include instruments. Here's a webcam, here's a satellite, here's an airplane with engines, here's a bunch of seismic sensors, here's a water gauge, and also here's a smartphone, here's a telescope array, but another, and here's the LHC, an eccentric experiment at the LHC. But we also get data from computers. So here we have a whole set of computers producing data, and here we have a database full of data, and all this data, whether it was raw data or came from computers, is passed through a whole bunch of filters with all sorts of interfaces enable you to convert data from one format to another format. Each filter is actually made up of lots of subprograms, which I sort of try to illustrate here. Sometimes you don't exhibit that and just put it in the cloud, so it just as a filter in the cloud, you don't look at how it's made up. And you have information flowing through and then landing up at the user, where the user sits in front of their display and studies this result of this these filters. Remember, a filter is just a computer program, sometimes called map in the area of MapReduce, which takes in data and gives out data, or takes in data, gives out information, takes in information, gives out knowledge. All of these, this process is governed by the data analytics, and the analytics is just something that sits in one of these filter clouds or one of these filter services. So when we talk about data deluge, we really mean an information deluge, a knowledge deluge, a wisdom deluge, and a decision deluge, because we have a deluge at every step of this pipeline. Here's one example of this pipeline for Google Maps. You might say the data comes from traditional maps with overlays from satellites and street cams. The information is all cleaned up and organized and presented to you by the Google Maps webpage. Then you go and ask for how to get from A to B. That's sort of the knowledge of an optimized route. And then you make a decision. You decide which route to take. You use the walking route or the driving route, and you make some decision about the choices they have for driving. So that's an example of this pipeline for something which is relatively familiar.